Hi everybody, my name's Mike. I'm a journeyman beekeeper in North Carolina, and today we're going to talk about inner covers. So let's get into it. So the first inner cover that we're going to talk about is just your standard one. It comes with a hole. The rest of the board is solid. No top entrance. Nothing fancy about it. All right. What it's used for is giving the bees a little bit of space on top of the frames in order to move around, ventilation, feeding, and serves as a bee escape. When you take a look at the inner cover, most of them come with two different depths on each side. This one's a 3/8 on this side and a 1/4 on this side. The 3/8 side typically goes down towards the bees, and the 1/4 stays on top. Now, for feeding, what we do is we'll stick an empty box on top. That means it has no frames in it, just a shell of a box. And we'll put a mason jar feeder right in the middle, and we'll let them just eat up. The other things you could do is take a bucket that has the screen. It's called feeder bucket, and you just put that on there. It's really optional if you surround it with another box and put an outer cover on, but here in North Carolina we have to do that. Little tip here is if you actually turn it around and you put the 1/4 side on the side with the bees will draw out comb on top of the frames, and that you can scrape off after each inspection. Put it in a little, well, we put it in a giant mason jar, but we call it the wax piggy bank. And once that jar fills up, or we get 2 or 3 filled up, we'll go ahead and make candles and everything out of that. And typically the queen's not laying in those cells that are on top of the frames. The bees are filling it with resources, so the smells are intense whenever you make the candle. It's just a tip. But this is the typical one. There's lots of different styles, and we're going to go through all those. So this inner cover here has the notch in the top. You can see that there. It also has this style hole. So as I mentioned with the other one, we use a mason jar to feed. This one, you can't do that. You can put the bucket feeder on top again on this one, but the reason why the hole looks like that is because you can install a bee escape on there. Now, when your super is full of honey and you want to get the bees out, you can stick this inner cover with the bee escape installed, with the notch up on top here, and you can put a solid piece of wood or really anything where the bees can't get down into the brood's nest. You can put that here, and it'll take a couple of days, but with the bee escape installed, the bees will climb up, they'll come out the front, they'll go back into the hive, but they can't get back up into the super. Not even if they go into the hive, climb up, it'll be blocked off. And if they try and come in this way, the bee escape, when you install that, will block it off as well. So that gives you a chance to let the bees naturally clear out of the super. Then you just come along, you take the super with you, you take whatever solid board in between the brood's nest and the super, you put another empty super on top, and you can stick this back on top, take out the bee escape, and the bees will use this for ventilation. They'll climb up, they'll ventilate by pushing the hot air out through this notch, and then you're good to go. They have ventilation again. There's no moisture building up, no chalk brood. That's kind of what you want to see is the bees up here fanning out. Now, you can flip this over and this will serve as your upper entrance. Now, we do this during winter so that the bees can ventilate. Ventilation is important. they will sit up here and just push all the hot air out. You want the hot air out because if it doesn't, moisture will collect, moisture will drip down on the bees at night. It'll freeze because it's winter, and then your bees will die. Now, if you don't have anything dripping down on them, they will survive an extreme cold. So that's fine. You just got to realize extreme cold they're okay with. Water dripping on them, they're not. So we'll flip this over. This also serves as a means for them to come out, use the bathroom when we have warmer days in the winter. Use the bathroom, come back in. They typically won't use the bathroom in the hive box during the winter. They'll stay in a cluster, they'll hold it like they're on an airplane stuck in the window seat. You know, they will hold it, and then when they get warm, they'll come out. And you'll notice that during the winter, there'll be a little streaks of brown kind of on the front of the hive. That's just like they got so excited that when they were coming out, it just went. Now, if you have excessive amounts of brown streaking, that would be, if you're counting them, more than 15, 20, then you might be having a different issue called nosema. If you're having that problem, take a look at some of the research. That way you know how to fix the problem. This inner cover is pretty cool. It's got 3 holes. You can tell we took the mesh off the center hole here, but it's got 2 feed holes. That's the 2 round ones. And we took the mesh off the center one because we were conducting an experiment. Do they eat faster when there's no mesh or when there's mesh? And we found out that with no mesh, they will down that syrup very, very quick. With mesh, they will not. For something that took a day, it took them 3-4 days before they got the same size down given at the same time. This portion over here is where you feed them pollen patties. Now, it's a giant space. And I get that when you get your pollen patty, the patty actually fits perfectly in this space. I would suggest not doing that. Cut your patties into fourths, and then maybe even 1/4 of an inch actually, and then stick it here, let the bees eat it. If you put the whole patty there, hive beetles will come in, they'll start reproducing in there, and then next time you open it, you'll have hive beetles running around, and you'll have larvae all in your pollen patty. So just put small amounts here. That's what I'm saying. This board's also very easy. You know exactly which side's down because there is no bee space here on this side. And if you're looking here, you have exactly 3/8 of an inch. So that 3/8 of an inch, face it towards the bees. The next one I'm going to show you is your custom built inner cover. We use this one for educational purposes. I did put a hole here originally thinking that I'd be able to feed, but I did not use plexiglass. I just used some plastic that I had left over from a poster. So it works too. The educational portion of it is I will put this on when I know that we have kids or people interested in coming over and looking at the bees, and I will cover this hole with a little piece of wood, or if I have an extra piece of plastic, I'll cover that. And that gives the children a chance to look down into the beehive. Typically they'll come over, they can look in the side windows that I have on the hive boxes or watch the bees come in and out the front, but they get very interested when they can look down and see how many bees are really in there, not just on one frame. With custom inner covers, you'll also find very simplistic inner covers. Burlap is one of them. They use it in all regions, and the way it works is you just cut essentially burlap to the size of your hive and you just put it right on top. The bees will propolize all the little holes in the burlap, which will form kind of an insulation. It almost, when we used it, it kind of felt like a mix between like leather, kind of when you're taking it off, and plastic. So pleather. But it worked pretty well. Not so much for us. When we took it off, one time it would solidify, we put it back on, and then because of the heat and the bees propolizing it again, it would be sticky, and every time I take it off, it pops, and when it pops multiple times and pulls, the bees are not happy with that. If I'm doing it wrong, let me know. But all I was doing was cutting a size to fit my hive. I put it on top, put the outer cover on, and then call it good. It's also safe to note some people in the warmer weathers do not use inner covers. There's really no need for it. Outer cover is on top of your hive with no inner cover, and then if you're having a ventilation issue, you can just prop it up with a stick, tacks, anything that's consistently there and won't slip off. You just prop it up a little bit and the bees will fan all the hot air out, or they'll actually use it as an upper entrance. And that's totally doable if you're in the right area for that. I know some snowy seasons, it's probably not the best idea. And I haven't had an issue, because we did try to go no inner cover, taking the tops off. They just don't stick that much, because you can put your hive tool right in the side and just pry it a little bit and it will pop all the propolis. You'll see the whole top cover just move like that. It'll pop all that off and then you can just take it off. Bees aren't typically going to build comb on top of the, or on the inside top of the inner cover either. There's just not enough space for them. That 3/8 bee space is all they really get. My last one I'm going to show you is the insulated inner cover. It's also called a candy board because it's dual purpose. We have a piece of insulation here for the bees during the winter. We have a notch in the front so the bees can push out the hot air, making sure that moisture doesn't collect. And we will also pour in hard candy into the inner cover board, and that will also soak up any moisture. So it's twofold. It will soak up moisture because of the hard candy that we put in there, and we'll pour it as a liquid in there. You let it set overnight, it'll get real hard. You can stick it on top of your hive box and the candy's not falling out. The bees will just eat it up. A little tip if you're going to make your own, these types of insulation are great, but if you're thinking, oh, I'll just get some styrofoam, the bees will actually the bees will tear up the styrofoam and bring it out the front of the hive. So they just see it as garbage, essentially. They don't mess with this insulation. It's nice and smooth. They just walk on it. And that's all, everybody. That's a top cover. But that's a wrap.